Good evening and welcome to the 17th episode of the Rangers Gameplan Podcast, where we discuss the week that was the New York Rangers. I'm Weston, I'm joined by Evan. We're here to talk about the past three games, so the Canes win, the loss to the Wild in whatever that was, and last night's pretty damn good win.
Yeah, obviously it's not all sunshine and rainbows. We are dealing with some injuries currently. I guess we'll start off there. Obviously, they are currently 9-2-1.
Yeah.
I believe, right? That's the current record. So obviously, very, very good. They lead the Metro, and despite all the injuries, obviously it's kind of a good time for them to happen. You never really want injuries, but at least you can kind of get them out of the way early, and you've built yourself enough of a buffer to the point where you could lose a good amount straight and still be over 500, which obviously we want to avoid doing. But that's just kind of shows where they're at currently. Obviously, Fox and Hedel are out. I think Hedel should be back somewhat soon, but I think the earliest Adam Fox can return is November 27th at the earliest. So
yeah, so Hedel went
definitely not ideal.
Yeah, so Hedel went on the 4-game IR. Fox went on LTIR, so that's 10 games minimum. Which, it's not great. I'll kind of piggyback off of there's no good time for a player to get injured, obviously. And there's no good player, especially players who contribute a lot. The first game that Fox was not there, the power play looked like Fox was not there. But those are two players, and Shesterkin also to an extent. Those are players who don't have a long history of injury concerns. And so I don't want to say I feel good that it's them, because that sounds awful. But three guys that it was just freak accident in one game, except for the Fox thing, almost a freak accident. I don't think these are going to be nagging issues for a long time. Like, if this was Lingrid once again getting just peppered and he's on the IL again for God knows how long, that's a very different conversation, because then it's, oh my god, he's gone for the 50th time in like 3 seasons.
Yeah.
But also,
yeah, and especially go ahead.
Like, watching the injuries, I'm still trying to figure out what happened on all of them. Like,
Yeah, the Fox one was, oh man, I there was definitely quite a bit of discourse on the social medias about that one. I will say it's not the most egregious thing I've ever seen that Aho did. But on the flip side, Adam Fox didn't have the puck, so I don't know how that's deemed incidental. I'm not accusing him of anything. I've definitely seen way way worse knee on knee plays. In my time as a fan, that wasn't as bad, but still, it's frustrating. And obviously, Trouba had the quote after the game where he has to fight after he does anything, and Aho was approached about responding to that several times during the game and didn't. So I don't know. It's tough. The other two, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Hedel, they're saying it was from the hit, I believe, in the first period on Jesper Fast. Now, once again, doesn't make any sense to me because he played damn near an entire 20 minutes after it happened and, quite frankly, looked phenomenal in all of those minutes. So I'm not sure. In terms of Igor, I think he obviously played lights out in the Carolina game. Yeah. I think they're just being extremely careful with him. Especially with how awesome Jonathan Quick has been. I think there's just no reason if you're 9-2-1 now and Igor's feeling sore to any extent, I think you can definitely play it on the safe side, especially when you're not playing divisional opponents. The past couple games, and obviously you have Minnesota tomorrow. I think if they're not huge games and you've built up this buffer for yourself, you can sit him. We're recording this on Wednesday. He was a full participant in practice this morning.
Okay.
So obviously it's nothing severe. They're definitely just being super cautious with him. But yeah, I mean, losing Fox is definitely tough. Like I said, it's ideal that it happened this early in the season, especially when they're clearly rolling. And the other thing, Eric Gustafson continues to look just phenomenal in all these games. On the power play, it looks like he just took over for Adam Fox. I guess more so in the game last night. With obviously didn't look great right away, which isn't a shock because he has not played with those 4 players ever. With a little bit of practice and everything, he definitely looks like he fits right in. So I guess that's a good thing as well. Let's say at some point if the power play is struggling, I don't think they would necessarily take Adam Fox off of it, but it's just good to know that you have a backup option if there are injuries again, or let's say they're struggling and they just want to mix something up. Mm-hmm. You now have proven that this guy can, step into that role and be pretty good. I'm not exactly sure what the status of the goaltenders are for the game against Minnesota tomorrow.
I'm seeing
like I said, Igor was a full participant. Yeah, I think I have the feeling that they're probably going to start Louis Domingue. I hope not, but apparently Jonathan Quick has some upper body injury going on. So hopefully, if it is the case, it's just for one game. It's just freaking me out a little bit because Igor, like I said, they had him on a full workload today in practice, so I just don't quite understand, but that also just kind of confirms that they're probably just being extra cautious with him. So,
yeah, I'm interested. I did not know that he was a full practice this morning, so that's even more jarring to me. I thought he was still kind of easing his way back into it. I think you probably have, because you're gonna have the Columbus game Sunday. I think he probably goes in that game. And then you have that extra time off. So that'll probably just be like, hey, get him back in the swing of it. Feel good. You get that week off. Great job, by the way, NHL. Great job there.
I don't understand the schedule.
Luckily, you get a month off in between those 2 games, but you will play 7 back-to-backs in the following week. So that's unfortunate for you. But you'll have plenty of time to make sure that everything is good going into that Devils game, which is obviously important. And, I gotta be honest, I feel better and better about that every single day we get closer to it. Because the Devils they're playing hockey, but it's not great. Last night was...
I think they're more power play merchants than we have been the past couple of years, I'd say. Obviously, it's still early in the season. Yeah, but they do look really just putrid 5-on-5. And obviously, we're not wishing injuries upon anybody, but Jack Hughes is supposedly going to miss a good chunk of time. Now, like I said, I'm not wishing any injuries on anybody. I obviously would like both the Rangers and the Devils to play each other full strength. That kind of goes without saying. Just before anybody spins that into us like throwing a party about him being hurt. That's not the case at all. But it is definitely big news just in terms of, divisional the news. I guess they it doesn't take a hockey expert to realize they do rely on him quite a bit.
Good player make team better is a very simple concept.
Yeah.
And
their power play is ridiculous, though. I will say that. I think it's like over 40% right now, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's ridiculous, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's probably not sustainable. Over 40 is
You don't think a 41.7% power play is sustainable for the entire season? Is what you're telling me.
I don't think so. No, I'm gonna say no on that one.
Their power play looks absolutely phenomenal. There's no way around it. If I were Peter Laviolette going into that game, I would just say, don't throw a single hit. No. If we can keep them off the power play, it's free. That's all you have to do, is just not take a penalty.
Yeah. Yeah, so they lost, 6-3 to the Avs last night, and I think they had 2 power play goals. So it's still very early. And they are above 500 right now, but obviously missing Jack Hughes at some time, and I believe Luke Hughes is also on the injury report now.
Ooh.
I don't know if you watched the game. I didn't really either. I watched like the first 10 minutes of it, and then I just went to bed. But I saw this morning the Ross Colton hit on Luke Hughes was just he should be suspended.
I have not
1,000%.
I have.
It's I don't know if you haven't seen it. It's legitimate textbook boarding. Like 5 feet away from the boards, just cross checks them in the numbers, and Luke Hughes was like struggling to get up. And then on top of that, he goes behind the net and apparently high sticks Timo Meier. So that guy was just I don't know what he was on a rampage last night. He was just out for blood. So I think he definitely deserves a suspension, 1,000%. I've never really seen a player do that before. Just board someone and then go and cut someone's lip is pretty crazy.
That is okay. So I found it. That's insane. That transpired.
Yeah, it's like I don't know what was going on, but yeah. Regardless of all that, the Devils have. Yeah, just I guess we'll just talk about that for a couple minutes.
That dude bent down to elbow him in the spinal cord. And then just walked over.
Yeah, it was. And I was looking at some comments on it, and there were some people saying like, "Oh, Luke Hughes has to like be aware that somebody's behind him in that situation or whatever." These idiots were saying, and I was like, "Dude, like."
These are the people that, like, if you got stabbed walking out of MSG, they'd be like, "Gotta keep your head up, man. First rule of hockey."
Like typically, it's if the puck gets dumped in and two players are chasing it, like you might see a little hit, to the board just to kind of finish a check. That was like really bad because you see Luke Hughes like look behind him, almost expecting what I just said, and he just gets destroyed into the ports, and I'm like, jeez. And then just to go around and cut someone's lip immediately after.
Well, I mean, he started contact almost at the goal line. Like, it's not even like, oh, it was bang, bang. No, he just... Oh, yeah, don't worry.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. He's gotten a $5,000 fine. Don't worry.
That's it? So he's not going to miss any time?
That's the maximum. Cool. You can fine him $5,000, and that is it.
Yeah, so if he does it the next game, he'll just get another fine. Yeah, this is it's not a serious league. Anyway, yeah, so obviously the Devils have not looked necessarily up to expectation, and neither have the Canes, by the way. They've looked a little bit better than I think the last time we talked about the Hurricanes, but obviously we beat them, two men down. And it's not like we blew them out or anything, but at no point did I really feel threatened of the Canes winning that game. The only goal was obviously the Seth Jarvis, mini breakaway that happened. It is what it is. Obviously, they did have some good chances outside of that, but I mean, they take penalties like constantly, and that's the other thing I'll say. In the first period, I think the Canes had 3 or 4 penalties, and then the rest of the game, the refs just refused to call anything on them. Obviously, they won the game. I'm not trying to sit here and complain about refs all day, but I mean, there was no joke, like 3 or 4 blatant high sticks that the refs just decided not to call. I'm not asking them to call every little thing in a game, but things like that you absolutely have to call, like high sticking penalties, tripping, things like that. You have to call when they happen.
Unserious league, man.
Yeah,
I'm gonna find that.
Obviously, they win that one. Minnesota, the game on Saturday was. Oh man, obviously they score 3 quickly. I think all in the first 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. The Rangers go up 3-0. The rest of the game, they didn't look like they had their legs under them, and but before I get into anything else, there's no excuse for blowing 3-0 leads. I don't care if you have your backup goalie in. I don't care who's injured. You can't do that, especially when you play the 1-3-1, like you're playing the trap. Which I guess that's the thing, is they got away from doing that, and that's kind of why they blew the lead.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things missed defensively. There was the one goal where Zuccarello was just like by himself on the far post and just taps it in.
That's how you won.
So they clearly just got away from their game. And I think the players know that. They were talking about that quite a bit. Like, listen, like if we just stuck within our system, we win that game easily. Now, the Rangers, regardless of anything, they did not deserve to get a point in that game. I'd make the argument that might have been worse than the Nashville game. Because at least the Nashville game, it's like they weren't obviously they were terrible in that one, but
Mm-hmm.
they at least showed some life. I mean, there was multiple shifts where the Rangers just could not get out of their zone for like a minute and a half to 2 minutes, which was, yeah, I mean, that was just really, really tough to watch. Like they were literally gasping for air on the ice. Like they could not get it out to save their life. And they got a point out of it. So they very easily could have won it. I mean, the game-winning goal in the shootout literally went off the post and off the back of Jonathan Quick and in. So it's not. It's. I mean, if you're gonna lose a game in the shootout, I'm not gonna necessarily go crazy over it. But like I said, there's no excuse for blowing a 3-0 lead. And honestly, as terrible as they played in that game, it's so far the Rangers have like the negatives aren't even worth spending that much time talking about because they just go out immediately the next game and just disprove anything you could possibly say. So, obviously they played terrible in that game, but I thought for the first two periods at least, last night they looked as perfect as you could possibly look. Obviously going up 5-0 and then letting in 3 goals isn't ideal. But it is what it is. I think being up 5-0 against. By the way, Detroit is absolutely buzzing right now. They've been really, they've looked really, really good, especially because that lineup now has quite a bit of offensive firepower. And 2 of the 3 goals were just. I'm not trying to sit here and make excuses, but they were just kind of really unlucky, quick goals. That it is what it is. It's not like anything I'm gonna hoot and holler over. They still won the game. It's always tough to stay fully on the gas when you go up 5-0.
Yeah.
So if you let up 2 quick ones and then Cop Potts one, it is what it is. Like it's not anything too worth spending too much time over.
Yeah. So to go back to the not the Nashville game, the Minnesota game, I gotta be honest. I understand they take the 3-0 lead and then they blow that. And if you are ever in life allotted a 3-0 lead in anything, you really do need to win that. That just felt like the fakest 3-0 lead the Rangers have ever had. Like, they didn't even look good taking that 3-0 lead. Like, the Panarin goal was just... The Panarin goal was he was way outside of the boards and just kind of thought, screw it, something's got to be over there, and it happened to go in. It was a beautiful shot. But he couldn't see the goaltender and just immediately the reaction of, oh, I can't see him, he can't see me, yeet. The VC and Gustafsson goal were both kind of, I believe the VC one was a bang it in front and the Gustafsson goal was was it a tip or was it also kind of a bang in front?
The Gustafsson one, it was like a weird kind of breakdown play from the Wild, and then Gustafsson was just all alone, and the goalie was just way out of position, and he scored.
Like,
Jimmy Vesey literally scored by accident. Like he was tied up with somebody in front, and the defenseman pushed him into the crease, and it just went off his like leg or skate and in. He didn't mean to do that. He got pushed into the crease, and then it just went off of him and in. So.
It never felt like they played a competent game. And so, yeah, they blew it. They should have lost 4-0. They should have lost maybe 4-1 because you give them the Kreider goal. It didn't feel like they blew too much, although they did. The good things I take away from that game are the penalty kill still looked great. The face-off, they still dominated. The defense was very physical. This is a fun statistic. Wild had 39 shots in that game. Would you like to guess how many blocked shots the Rangers had?
I'm going to say like at least 20.
32.
Yeah, I'm not shocked at that. We were watching that just oh man. Yeah, it was it was tough to watch. They could not they literally couldn't clear it.
At minimum 71 shot attempts at minimum, and that doesn't count all shot attempts. But there were 70 pucks that had the direction of the net, and the fact that you got a point is kind of mind-numbing. And you go in. Also, we talked about that had the biggest trap game written all over it. Like I knew the second Fleury came in. I'm like, oh, the Wild are gonna win. Like, well,
yeah, it's just whenever we either play a backup goalie or there's a goalie substitution in the middle of the game, we just no longer score goals. It's that simple.
Then you have last night's game, and any bad taste you had is completely washed away. That was unbelievable. And I said it in the recap I made for it. They won 5-0, and then they just kind of didn't try in the third period.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I think if you are to allow 3 unanswered third period goals, this is the best way to do that. In a game, you still win, you still have a ton of positive to take from it, but then you can go, hey, we allowed 3 goals in the third period, and there was a shot, I forget who it was on the Red Wings that had it with like 30 seconds left, that Quick just had to sprawling leg pad save. Like, it was very close to being, they got 30 seconds with an empty net to tie this game, and who is to say? Mm-hmm. And had that happened...
Oh yeah, that thankfully it didn't. Oh man, it's tough, right? Because you obviously can't let your foot off the gas against a team like that. I'm a big believer in Detroit right now.
Yeah.
Especially, DeBrincat looks fantastic. I just think they have a lot of depth in their lineup now, and obviously their mainstay guys are still there. Like Larkin still looks good. I think they have a really good chance of at least finishing top 3 in that division.
I would.
And I mean, so far this season, they've looked just really, really firing on all cylinders. So that's a team that you just can't really give any breathing room to, regardless of the lead you have. But I mean, like you said, just the first 2 periods were about as perfect as you can ask them to play. I think a little too many penalties than I would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, I mean, they just didn't give Detroit much whatsoever. It was really they once again they played within their system and locked it down for the first 2 periods. Quick, I mean, still just looks fantastic so far this season. Obviously, he let up 3 last night, but I'm not concerned about that. Even, the few good chances Detroit had in the first couple periods, he just made ridiculous saves on. He's looked really locked in so far. The other thing is that the defense is they still look borderline elite when they want to. I think the Miller Trouba pair is about as good as you can ask for. And obviously, we've talked about Gustafsson at length. He's a really, really good two-way defenseman. He's provided way more than anybody really expected him to so far. But obviously, we've talked about it many times. Like, I think unless Lindgren goes down, they still should be okay on defense. He's kind of the glue to the whole operation there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you would still like Adam Fox in the lineup, but I think just the difference without Adam Fox compared to without Ryan Lindgren is massive. I don't know what it is. The other thing I will say is, I mean, now you have a guy like Gustafsson who can really slide anywhere you want him to in the lineup and do it very well. Whereas before, we obviously had guys like Ben Harper doing that. And that just simply is not going to cut it. I guess the one negative I will say about the defense is Zach Jones hasn't looked. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to say it. He hasn't looked good. I guess is the easy way out. But I think he has looked decent in some shifts. It's just I don't really like how he's been kind of the sole reason for multiple goals given up in the past 2 games. That's the only thing. I think this is obviously the first time he's had, or is going to have a extended, stint with this team. He's usually in for a couple games and gets sent back down. Mm-hmm. This is something where he's looked good at times. I just think he's obviously an undersized defenseman, and it shows at times. He does get, bullied out quite often. And it's obviously it doesn't matter all that much. He's just a plug and play guy right now. But you would just like to see him show a little bit more, considering he is the first guy up if something goes wrong, right? I mean, it's just you would like him to not be as much of a liability. Braden Schneider, I still think is phenomenal this year. I've seen a lot of hate on him so far for whatever reason. I mean, maybe not a lot, but I just think he's the scapegoat for maybe not being as flashy or anything. But I mean, we say this about many defensemen. Like if you're not noticing him, it's probably a good thing, right? So that's perfectly fine. Zach Jones is the only. I mean, specifically in the game last night, he just gets danced in front of the net on the second Red Wings goal.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just something where you have a backup goalie, and that's obviously expecting a shot right in front there, and you either have to take away the crossover or just take away the original shot to begin with, and he did neither, and it just goes right through his legs, and Quick was out of position, and it's in the net. So things like that, it's just fundamentally incorrect from his game, and it sucks because he genuinely looks like Cale Makar in Hartford, and he comes up here, and then it's just a completely different story. But like I said, it is what it is. The other thing I will say about Fox being out, it sucks that he's going to miss basically this entire month, but I guess the good news is, like, they don't play a ton of games.
Yeah.
This month. I obviously you have the week off for whatever reason before the Devils game, so I think you play like 4 or 5 total games before his expected return date, or I guess the earliest. So it's not like we're gonna see Zach Jones in there for 25 games or anything. It's not gonna be anything ridiculous like that. Yeah, that's really the only gripe I have with the whole defense right now. They've definitely stepped up quite a bit. I think, like I said, the Minnesota game is probably the worst this team has looked all year. Like you said, there's at least 70 shot attempts. But I guess, like I said, it's I'm not gonna sit here and talk about it all that much, mainly because they don't do it all the time, right? And it was immediately fixed the next game. So just to put it in perspective, like, that's how basically every Rangers game has looked for the past 2 years. So it's not a constant thing anymore. If the only time they're gonna look that bad is when they're missing, well, during that game too, they were also missing Goodrow. So make it 4 guys you were without in the lineup, and when we go into this stupid schedule, they obviously have that West Coast trip. They come back for 1 game, immediately back to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to sit here and make a laundry list of excuses, but it's like, if the only times they're going to look like that is kind of where you can expect it a little bit, I'm okay with it. Just because every single game for the past 2 years, regardless if you were fully healthy, if it was home, away, didn't matter, that's how the Rangers played. So
I have, before we move on, talking about the schedule, I have a really fun game to play, Evan. Are you ready for the fun game?
we're going to have a lot of fun. I
you know
don't know
how
what this is
there's-
about to be, but
So you know how there's a, week in between games between this upcoming Blue Jacket and Devils game, right? Would you like to guess how many back-to-backs the Rangers will have in between the Devils game and the end of December?
6. We're going to go 6.
6 on the dot. You nailed it.
Wow, that was a complete guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why? Like, I'm having trouble understanding this. Like, you could put a couple of those games within the week you have off for no reason?
Yeah. You'll have
So,
a back-to-back.
yeah.
Oh, let's do more and see how many of those are with travel. So you'll have a back-to-back in Philly, home for Boston. That'll be just a lot of fun. At Nashville, December 2nd, and then home for San Jose on the 3rd. We're not going to be the first team to lose to them, by the way. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
In Washington, home for LA. You'll have Oh, that's not a back-to-back. I'm stupid. Home for Edmonton and Buffalo, and then on the road both against Florida and the Lightning. That's a great job, NHL.
Yeah, it's like we do this every year. It's just I don't understand why they do the things that they do. I guess the good news is that they obviously, when Igor comes back and knowing that Jonathan Quick can handle himself, it's definitely good to have two goalies that are rolling right now when you have that coming up. You would prefer to not have that many back-to-backs.
With travel.
I think the only time, it's completely different if, like, we were playing the Devils and then at home against somebody the next night, because, like, the players are sleeping in their own beds both nights. Like, it doesn't matter. But, like, why are you flying across the country, like, multiple times in a month? It just doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. I don't get it.
God bless the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we go through this every year. They will never change, and it's always going to be a wacky schedule. No other league does anything like this. I don't get it. Yeah, I guess, like I said, they're rolling right now. Just to kind of recap the past 3 games, like I think when we came on here the last time, we kind of picked out that Saturday Minnesota game as a loss.
Mm-hmm.
You would have preferred it to be a loss without a 3-0 lead blown, but that was still kind of something that we picked out because they're not going to win every game, obviously. Um, like I said, it's a frustrating way to drop it, but at the end of the day, like they're winning the games that we feel like they should, and not many of these have. I mean, that's probably the only one where I felt like they just didn't deserve a point whatsoever. And all the other
Right.
wins, I genuinely felt like the Rangers played very, very well and were the better team. Um, that's the only thing, and especially to take it like to take it to Detroit like that. For 2 periods is definitely impressive,
I'm
especially when you're missing guys and all that. Like they are a very, very good team this year. So
I yeah, I Detroit's legit, and to run them off the ice for the first 40 minutes, following a deflating loss, you're still having a backup goaltender in net. It it answered everything I could have possibly asked from the Minnesota game, and so I don't know. I didn't have too much like irritation built up from the Minnesota game because I never thought for a moment they looked good enough to win that game, even when they were going up 3-0. But then you come back and respond like that. I'm like, yeah, they have a coach that holds people accountable. That's crazy. That you have
yeah, like they play terrible one night and then it gets fixed the next. It's like that's how it's kind of supposed to be. So
crazy concept. Do you have anything more from those 3 games, or can we talk about the little bit of the line jumble that they've gone through, and then obviously the defense shuffle? Because I have a question for you on Gustafson. But
I don't really have much else to say. I guess the lines and everything would be is kind of the hot topic right now,
yeah,
regardless of the record and how good they've looked. So
I'll start with the easy one. Gustafson absolutely has to be on power play too. I believe, has he been there all season, or has it been Trouba for the majority of it?
they've kind of like mixed it around a little bit. I know he did get some looks there, but Keandre was there for a little bit, Trouba was there for a little bit, Gustafson too. But I think now that you've seen how good he could be right now, he just absolutely has to be there.
He's, I mean, the power play last night looked fantastic. If you took all the numbers off of it, if it was a like Jackie Robinson type of game and everyone wore whatever number, I would not have known that it wasn't Adam Fox. And I'm not saying that to badmouth Adam Fox in any way. That is simply to praise how good he looked on that spot with him. And I don't think Fox is going to have issues because it's Fox and he has never shown a problem quarterbacking the power play. But if he's having a week or there's a night where he just can't get it going, I think you have a really, really good security blanket with Eric Gustafson right there. And how on earth did he become the best move of the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the best value signing in the league for sure, at minimum. Like he's been so good, and defensively too. It's not like he's just a completely offensive guy. Like he's just taken over his role perfectly. And now, especially, that he could play in the top 4 on defense. It's a huge thing moving forward for injury reasons, or if guys are struggling. Now you have a guy that could slide up there without any issues whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before the season even started. Like, we were pretty excited for it. He's shown a lot of offensive upside before, and I think especially on this power play where you have Kreider that is just... But by the way, I don't know how many times we have to say it. Like, he is the best net front player of all time. I don't really know who comes close, because nobody really does. Respect to Joe Pavelski. But Chris Kreider, I think, has like significantly more tip-in goals than him. So I'm not. It's not really much of a competition. But Gustafson is just. I mean, it's almost like the rest of the power play just told him exactly what he needed to do, and he was just like, okay, and like just filled in Adam Fox's role without issue. So I mean, even it's one thing if all he did was just shoot it at Kreider twice and that was it. Like that wasn't all he was doing right. Like he played exactly like Adam Fox in terms of cycling the puck around and everything. That is what's most impressive to me, because I feel like when you watch that power play, Adam Fox moves obviously horizontally across the blue line, and he's just gonna, cycle the puck around and generate space and time. And Gustafsson was doing that exact same thing. Like he took a guy that's elite at that and just filled directly in for it. So that's impressive to me. It's not like we're hyping him up just for shooting it at Kreider and letting Kreider do Kreider things. He filled in that exact role perfectly. So I don't know what else to really say about him. But he's just been ridiculous. I guess in terms of the rest of the lineup, obviously we've talked about Capo Caco quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's now still 2 points on the season.
Yeah.
We're still early, but I'm very close to just being out on him. And as sad as it is to say, like I said, I'm not fully willing to blame it all on him because I don't think Mika and Kreider have been that terrific on that line 5-on-5 to begin with. But I mean, regardless of anything, it's his 5th season in the league. This is a contract year for him. I don't care who he's playing with. He would like to see more out of him. Like I said, I'm not asking for him to have 25 points right now, but you would like for him to be a noticeable player on the ice. I can't really think of a game or a shift this season where Kako has really stood out. I don't enjoy saying that, especially because all offseason we talked about him and Lafreniere needing to take that next step for this team to really be where they want to be. Laf looks great. I have really no complaints about him. But like I said, the last episode too, like my biggest issue right now is Kako just looks invisible. That's the thing. It's one thing if he was just getting chances and not finishing. That's an entirely different story. But like I said, it's 2nd overall pick, 5th year in the league. I don't care what line he's on. I don't care anything like that. You have to see more, regardless of any of the other variables.
I mean, the thing is, I agree. I don't think Mika and Kreider have looked great 5-on-5. But I'm talking offensively speaking. They've looked fine defensively. I haven't noticed Kako in our zone at all. I can't think of any hit or nice breakup that he's done to this point of the season. He's just a body on the ice. He is a ghost to this point of the season. And at least last year, even when he would go through those month-long droughts where he'd have 2 points and they'd both be like secondary assists, he'd be noticeable. You'd see him doing work, and it's just, if you told me he didn't play last night, I would have 100% believe you. I can't think of what he's done. You move Wheeler up with Kreider and Zibanejad, and they didn't look great, but they looked better with Wheeler, I thought, than with Kako. And they didn't look great, but they looked good defensively for the most part. And offensively, it didn't get better or worse. It just kind of was what it was. That is an issue that we will have to address at some point because, the first line looking like that with, at minimum with Kreider and Zibanejad, what, like $15 million on that? Has got to be doing more than this. But
and I guess in terms of that too, it's like, I mean, specifically last night, it's Kreider and Mika had, off the top of my head, like 3 2-on-1s, and I believe at least 2 of them were 5-on-5. So I believe that they can get it going at some point. But my issue is like those 2 together, 5-on-5 speaking, have never looked otherworldly at any point. Obviously, they can come through with some big goals, but they just never really take over games 5-on-5. That's it. Obviously, the power play goes without saying at this point, but it's just not where you want it to be. So, I mean, the reality of it is, like, the Rangers have been trying to find somebody that can make that line click ever since Pavel Buchnevich was traded away, because that line together was maybe the best line in the league, and they just haven't found somebody that can really come, make that line be anywhere close to that. And I'm not really asking for it to be that good, but you would definitely like something from them 5-on-5. So, I mean, it's tough. You would love Kako to just immediately right from the jump this season to fully break out and everything. That would obviously help us out quite a bit. But it's just, I mean, like I said, it's his 5th season. I'm not sure if there's any excuses left. I mean, he just had his stint on the first line, so that was pretty much the last one left, is that he wasn't getting top line minutes, and it definitely sucks. Like I'm not rooting for him to be bad. I know a lot of people are super diehard defenders of him. I get it. It's a touchy topic around here. I would love him to be what he's supposed to, but I'm just kind of past that point. I don't really see it ever coming to fruition, and when we talk about a lot of things, like at some point you're going to have to make a move, whether it's internally. I don't know if you want to bring Brendan Othman up at some point this season or something, but you can't be where you want to be as a contender without getting absolutely anything from the right wing, because that goes for Wheeler and Kako. I still don't think Wheeler has a point. So
he got one. He got one. He has a singular point.
Okay, he got one. So
Yep.
Cool. I mean, what is that? 1 point in 12, 13 games?
Yeah.
So
he's
I mean, he got one now, but yeah, I mean, like I said, you're really not going to win anything if that's the case. I'd be willing to try Will Cooley up there. Boy, has he looked fantastic. By the way, I don't think we've talked about him nearly as much. Specifically last night, like, obviously he scored a goal. Other than that, he's been a dominant force along the boards. Listen, Mo Sider is considered one of the toughest guys to really bring down, and he is one of the most physical D-men I've ever seen. At least as of recent, like, he is not afraid to throw the body around, and he is very tough to bring down on a hit. Will Cooley completely demolished him at least twice in that game. So and he's done that multiple times this year, just big hits along the boards, and he's shown a lot of offensive upside. I'd be willing to try that, because obviously people are still sitting here talking about Patrick Kane. Listen, it doesn't have to be him. Obviously, it didn't really click last year. And the other thing I will say about Patrick Kane is he is just fresh off the surgery that guys like Carl Hagelin and Nick Backstrom had. Hagelin was continually hurt and is now retired, and Backstrom is stepping away from hockey from that same surgery. So obviously, who knows what will happen with Patrick Kane. I'm not hoping for him to be hurt or rooting for that or anything. I'm just saying it's definitely risky, because at this current moment in time, you have one move to make. It has to be a very, very cheap move, and that's it. Like, they have no money. So if you can bring him in for ridiculously cheap, again, it's who knows if he's going to play. I mean, that's where we're at. Like I said, who knows how he's going to heal and everything. But you currently have two other guys that very recently just have openly said, like, I can't play because I'm not healthy from that same surgery. So, like I said, you have one move to make, and I would like to try Will Cooley up there, or if it's really still struggling on the right wing position, maybe Brendan Othman or somebody. But I would try those things first before you just put all your eggs in one basket again for Patrick Kane. And all of a sudden he can't play, and he's out for the year. So,
but have you considered that Kane would simply go back to 2015 form and score 90 goals in the?
Oh yeah, heartbreaker sellies every time. I would love that. I would absolutely love that, but I'm not willing to bargain on it. So
the two thoughts I'll give you on that: one, just give him ayahuasca and he'll be fine. Clearly, that's all it takes. And I would love Cooley on the first line for a little bit. I think. Because I'm saying that, like, Blake Wheeler wasn't a dumpster fire, but it wasn't good. Like, he didn't look great on the first line with Mika and Kreider, but it was, like, adequate, and people have been wanting Wheeler shot out of a cannon. So if he looks the exact same as Kako, where does that leave you?
Yeah, and just real quick about Wheeler too. Like obviously he's been talked about at length from the whole fan base. Last night was the first run he got at a first line, position. We said it last time too. Like this is his first time in a new place with new line mates, everything like that. He wasn't getting top line minutes until last night, and no power play time, no nothing. So it might take him a little bit to really get in a rhythm. I'm willing to give it a little bit longer for him just to see if it gets rolling, because people are already asking for him to be waived or traded or anything. I'm not saying he's going to score 60 goals or anything this season. I'm fully aware of that, but it's just this is not Chell. This is not a video game. It might take him a little bit to get acclimated because he's a human being. So if you give him a couple more games of top line minutes just to see if he gets in a rhythm, and he does, great. Now, do I feel like they should probably still make a move at that point? Yes. I mean, it's like I said, you need a decent amount of production from the top line right wing spot. It's that simple. Like if you want to win the Stanley Cup, you cannot have your first line and third line right wingers doing nothing on a nightly basis. So it's you definitely still need to look at other options. But like if the most time he's had to get acclimated was last night, and I'm not willing to only give him one game for that. So
I would be willing to give him I'd definitely be willing to give him 5 or 6 games there. So, through the new year with the way the schedule has shaped up. I thought he looked fine, and it's damning that he looked as fine as he did, because he hasn't had that chance to work with. And obviously there's practice, there's off-ice activities, and from what has been reported, he's seemingly very much stepped into a leadership role for the Rangers, which is great. Again, you're getting a person who's a good locker room presence for league minimum. I'm not having the conversation of cutting him yet. And Kakko's got to do something quick here, or else I think he's the move at the deadline. And
yeah.
You've had Lafreniere, who comes into the season having a significantly worse year last year than Kakko did, and he looks great. He looks like a new guy with Panarin and Hedl on the second line, and then Hedl goes down. You bring in Trocheck, and he looks fine. Still, he looks great. Last night,
doesn't miss a beat at all.
Like his play last night on the Panarin goal was it was fantastic. Just grinding away, being a pain in the ass, fighting for the puck. Finally gets it for a split second and tape to tape, with maybe a hair of a second to look over and see where Panarin was. Like he looks good. He looks fine. And
and by the way, Panarin real quick, 12-game point streak at this point. I think he has 20 on the year now.
Yep.
So I mean, we'll probably sit here and just talk about him every single episode of how good he's been. I just wanted to point that out. He's looked otherworldly so far. So
I do not let a singular hair grow on his head. It can't.
Yeah. By the way, apparently he was asked about that last night. One of the reporters said his hair was getting a little bit longer, and he supposedly said that since the winter is coming, he wants to be prepared for it. So I'm a little scared because not that he would really slow down, but it's just bald Panarin has looked just like Connor McDavid. So I would like him to just keep all of it off.
This is all I'm saying. Didn't Messier have a bit of hair when he first got here, and then during the run in '94, didn't he completely shave it and go like glossy head?
Yeah, he had a little bit, and then it was just completely bald. So I'm following his footsteps, please.
I'm ready to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
No, he looks fantastic. It's stupid how he's looked. And it's not just playmaking. He is so overtly confident to shoot the puck, which is wild, because when he first got here, he had one of the best shots in the league and just decided that he preferred being a playmaker. I don't know what the conversation went like, but thank you, whoever had that with him, of saying, hey, what if you shot? Like, kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Like, great move. And it's not even just the offense. He's looked pretty fine defensively. He's not a Zibanejad or a Kreider or anything like that, but he's been fine. I haven't noticed him with like awful turnovers or looking like a completely lost in our blue line, which is a notable improvement over last season.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, in Panarin's tenure with the team so far, even at his complete highest moments where he's looked great offensively, you still saw that quite often. Like, he's trying to do too much, and it's a turnover, it leads to a goal. Haven't really seen that this year. So, obviously, it's not like he's one of the best defensive forwards in the league. I think he's very far from that, but just in terms of being smart with the puck and not doing too much, it's vastly, vastly improved so far.
It's been wonderful. I do want to go back. Do you have any more for Panarin? Because you brought up a question or brought up something up a second ago that I want to ask you about. That's very
Yeah,
much...
no, I think I'm all. Oh, there's nothing else to be said on him. So
At some point, I don't think it happens this season because I think if it's the call up, you're trying to see what he can do with Mika and Kreider, and you wouldn't throw him on the third line. The thought of Will Cooley and Brendan Othman together that is going to be a very fun pair to watch in the coming years. Because again, I don't think Othman's going to come up and be a 30-goal player, but I think he's going to be a 15 to 20-goal player and a just nightmare to play against physically. And Cooley has seemed very similar. That's going to be a really annoying third line. And if you look at the Lightning in their back-to-back runs, I believe Gaudreau and I can't think of it now. He went to Gord.
Blake Coleman.
I was thinking of Gord.
Oh, and him too, but that was a line. Gaudreau, Gordon, Coleman.
Like, it was three guys. None of them are going to score 30 goals, but they're going to get 15, 20 and just make you want to die defensively. And if they get you open ice or to a board, I can very much see it's not going to end up being Bonino because he's 37 probably.
Yeah, so he's definitely up there.
I don't know. Every player in the NHL just seems like they're either like 22 or 37, and then there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
I don't know who it'll be centering them in a few years, but that could be just a nightmarish line going forward.
Yeah,
and
I've been so impressed with Will Cooley.
He's looked great. Also, just to throw it out there, Panarin in his first year with the Rangers, where he, nominated for the Hart, averaged 1.38 points per game. He's averaging 1.67 this year. Just tossing it out there for you in case you were interested.
Yeah, and that's, I don't see that going really down too much, just because, like, let's say even if he does go on a little bit of a drought, like he will have several times this year where he'll just have 3-4 points in a night. He does it every single year. So it's that, so far, if it's at that number, it's not going to drop too much, because even when he doesn't look great, he's just going to randomly have those nights where he just, like I said, takes over, and it's just going to bring it right back up.
I am beside myself with how good he's looked so far.
Yeah, and I guess just to talk about Brendan Othman a little bit, like when we were talking before the year, and even like the little while into the season, I still don't really want him to be brought up for a little while, only because he's looked great in Hartford so far. Let him just keep building confidence up. If it is your absolute last desperation attempt to get something on the right wing, then you could do it. I still just wouldn't feel great about it. I would like him to play a good chunk down there just to feel confident before you throw him into the wolves, because especially like if you were to do it now, he's got 2 games and then a week off and then immediately against the Devils. Like it could very easily just be a rough stretch for him, and then that just ruins everything. So especially because you're 9-2-1, there's no need to really do anything like that right now. But further into the season, we're gonna have more conversations about that for sure. Just bringing somebody in. Like I said, I would just like to see what you have in house first. Because you have one move to be made. That's it. So if it doesn't need to be made, awesome. So I would like to see if it actually needs to happen first or not.
That being said, if Kane isn't here by the next video, I am going to break many a table. Just so we're on the same page.
Yeah, and I just to, like, here's the thing about him, because Oh man, here's the thing, like when you get an absolute legend like that, it's tough to forget about it too quickly. So I understand why people are talking about it, especially when you haven't got anything from the right wing. Um, it's just I feel like if it happens, they're just going to throw him on the power play again.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I'm saying it wouldn't work, but you just be forcing it's something into a power play that doesn't need it, and that's where things could go wrong. You literally saw that before, because there's no way they don't put him on power play one. There's absolutely no way. So if that's not an issue, just I would rather somebody else. That's all I'm gonna say. Like if even if you get just some random mid like third line right winger, I'm cool with that over Patrick King, because like I said, I don't know if he's going to get hurt again in the year, and they're just going to be forcing him on the power play every single game, and I'm not confident in it working. So
Now that being said, imagine a second power play unit that has Gustafson and Kane. I I could get down with that.
yeah. Now
They,
the thing is, like the both power play units last season looked literally straight out of a video game, and they obviously went like 1 for 21 in a playoff series. So it's like I'm not. We can gush over that all we want, but it's like I don't think it gets much better on paper than the power plays the Rangers just had and didn't work. So
it the less I can think about last season, the better.
yeah, I'm definitely ready to move on. I guess yeah, I'd rather just I think about that series like just way more than I would like to. So anyway,
Once per
we
day,
are not
minimum.
gonna we are not gonna talk about that anymore and get angry. Obviously, I have Minnesota again tomorrow night.
Yep.
We have no idea who the goalie is gonna be, so we'll see.
Lou,
Um,
where's
now,
the puck?
you would like to see them win regardless. Just because Minnesota hasn't really been all that great this year, and you're back at home,
Well, this one
and
time this year, Evan, they did come back from a 3-0 deficit.
yeah, that's just yeah. Don't do that again. Like it would be hilarious if the Rangers go up 3-0 that quick again, and we'd all just be shaking. Anyway, yeah, that's a team that you would like to be able to win at least 1 out of 2 against.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a knock on them too much, because they are a good team. They're not a pushover team, but I would rather not get swept by them, especially because they have been one of the worst defensive teams this year. That's just flat out the truth. Obviously, the Rangers didn't play well enough to expose that the entire game the last time, but they give up a lot, like every single game. So it'll be interesting to see. I guess obviously then you have Columbus again, who you know had a very lackluster performance again against on the what was that, like the second game of the year or something.
Yeah.
So that's one of the bottom feeders of the division. You would like to win that as well, and then but that week off for whatever reason, and then the Devils. So that's kind of obviously what everybody has circled on the calendar. Even if you lose these next two, it is what it is. It wouldn't be the best thing in the world. You would like to just keep the momentum going. I'm just interested to see how they look after a week off against the Devils, because it could go one of two ways. They could look like a very dominant, well-rested team, or they could look rusty and lose to the Devils, and we have to hear about it from all their fans once again.
If I hear the word Fugazi one more goddamn time.
Yeah, I guess that's something, because here's the thing. That's obviously a huge measuring stick game, regardless of Fox and Hughes not playing. That's, it goes without saying why that's a measuring stick game. I think it's going to just show if the Rangers can actually keep this up against a team they're going to play multiple times this year, and I'd almost expect them to meet in the playoffs again. The Devils, like we said before, have not looked good 5-on-5. The Rangers have, so we'll see. I mean, like I said, I'd rather it be full strength. You would assume Igor is playing in that game.
Yeah.
And obviously Fox and Hughes not playing sucks, and it would have been great to see at full strength, but I'm not saying that's a must-win game. But if you do lose it, by God, it needs to be a really, really tough, good game from both sides at least. Because especially with the way that you just completely let your foot off the gas, and it's a team that you feel like you are better than, and they have not played up to par this year. You would just flat out you would like to win it. Especially because they're not even traveling for it. Like I said, they'll be off for a week. They'll have some practices. They'll sleep in their own beds for that game. It's not anything crazy. It's not like you have a week off and you have to go play in LA. It's you have a full week off to rest and practice, and I'm expecting them to show up. Now, this is completely off topic. I think we said it the last time too. I don't know why that game's not on TNT. I have no clue.
No one
Absolutely no
wants to watch
idea.
that in prime time.
Yeah, that would not get any viewers whatsoever. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about the Devils so far this year fully. I don't know how much you've watched of them, but I think it's just they still don't have a goalie, and they have looked so beyond terrible 5-on-5, and I think if you could just stay out of the box, you'll be fine.
Their power play is killer. Luckily, I don't think it would hold up if you have to go against them for 3 or more power plays. You have I think the 8th ranked penalty kill, and it's looked great. And if Boston wasn't just on a different planet, how, by the way, are they still the way that they are?
Yeah, isn't Pavel Zacha their number 1 center currently? Yeah. I have no idea. They're just never gonna lose. I have no
PK
no
is
clue.
94, by the way.
Yeah, that's
like,
ridiculous.
That's I was like, man, the Rangers have a penalty kill that's at like 85%. That's gotta be, close to the top, and they're lapping the field with them, which is not a shot at the Rangers because their PK is absolutely fantastic. I think they could definitely hold up 1, 2, or even 3 penalty kills against the Devils. If you get past that, you're begging for them to get free goals.
Mm-hmm.
If Shesterkin's back, you assume he's gonna have the week off. It's such a pick your poison type of game because you have 5 days off, like full days off before that game. And it's one guy's well rested is another guy's rusty. It sucks that that's how they plan that out, and I genuinely think the Rangers are getting a disadvantage by having to wait so long before that game. I don't know when the Devils play again. It just... Assuming that Fox is still definitely going to be out. I don't want to say I hope Hughes is out because I don't want a person to be injured. But if they also are missing one of their better players and a very integral part of their top power play unit, that would be beneficial to you.
It's like you said, we're not hoping he's hurt, but it would just be big news if he's out. That's all.
It's
the same thing like when Connor McDavid didn't play against us, we were like, okay, win the game. That's all it is.
If you both can be equally disadvantaged, as in missing your best player or one of your best players, that is going to make it a little more interesting. Ultimately, it's just going to be sticking to the same 1-3-1, and Shesterkin's the better goaltender to Vanacek. I'm not saying that to insult Vanacek, who has had a very solid season, but I would say Shesterkin is the best goaltender to a lot of goaltenders. There are very few people where I would say, oh yeah, they would beat him in terms of ranking. If you can keep their shots outside and you can play your game, I'm not even trying to think of what you have to limit them. If you can play your game of hockey that you have played to this point of the season, I think you can win that game very comfortably. It's just going to matter, can you stay out of the box? Which...
Yeah, and especially because it's just such a bad taste in our mouths. Obviously, we've talked about that at length on that series. Like, they just didn't play their game. Not that the Rangers had much of a game with the old coach, but still just, it's a team that you have been better than regardless of the standings last year or anything. They now have a coach that has implemented a system, and along with that, the players, I would hope, are going to see that as a revenge game and play angry. And I'm not saying it's a must win because it's weird to say that in a game in November. But if they do put up a stinker and drop a dud in that game, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. Just for the team's mentality sake, they have to at least look very, very solid in the game.
I agree with you. It's not a must-win game because you won't even be 20 games into the season at that point. It's a must-compete game. You can lose that game,
Mm-hmm.
and I will not be upset. If you lose that game in a shootout, if you lose that game in an overtime where it was, they take a 1-0 lead, you tie it, they go up 2-1, you tie it, you take a 3-1 or a 3-2 lead, they tie it, you go to the shootout, you go to overtime, whatever. That's fine. Even if you lose it in regulation and it's close, that's fine. You can't go out there in that game and get shelled or anything even close to it. If you lose that game by...
Yeah.
I think 2 goals is the worst you can lose that game. If you lose it by 3, I'm going to be pissed. Regardless of how it happens, even if one of them is an empty net, I'm going to be pissed about that game.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, I mean, like, just thinking of, going up 2-0, and then obviously after that game, the Rangers players, we talked about it during the series, like, they were laughing at the Devils on the ice and were extremely cocky and then ended up blowing it. I think just for their pride, you absolutely can't lose that game. Like, at least significantly. I'd expect them to look very, very good in it, regardless of who's playing, who's not. Just that's, I mean, it goes without saying, like, that is obviously, anytime we play them this year, it's going to be circled on the calendar. You just lost the playoff series to them. They feel the same way, regardless of anything. I mean, even when the Devils are nowhere near a playoff spot, they circle that on their calendar, and that's just the way it will always be for that fan base. Regardless, that's obviously what we're looking forward to. I wish we just didn't have a random week off in the middle of it, because that's kind of where it scares me, because I would rather them not be rusty whatsoever going into it. Obviously, the rest is a good thing, but you would just like them to play at least one in between that.
This is incredible. This is insane. You will not play the Devils again until February 22nd.
I don't get it. And also, like, why are we playing the Islanders in the Stadium Series and not the Devils? I mean, obviously, Rangers Islanders is a rivalry. It's been there for many, many years, but just, I mean, maybe not recently, but I understand why they would schedule it. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, if the Devils weren't playing an outdoor game at all, that's one thing. But they're playing the day before or after or something. It just I don't get it. I don't get it at all. That would probably break records for viewership if that were a game. Rangers Devils outdoors at MetLife. Like, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't take much expertise to be better schedule makers in the NHL. Whoever's currently in that position.
Still haven't released the jerseys for that, yeah?
Yeah, no, I don't get it. I don't get it. It makes no sense. But I mean, I think they usually take like a little bit to release them, but I don't remember it being this long of a wait, especially because like there were obviously the leaks of the alternate jerseys happening, and I don't think those would be the Stadium Series ones. I don't even know if they are going to happen at any point, but I don't know. Like, you would think as soon as you start selling tickets for it, you would start dropping the merch to just increase revenue, because I think it would be smart to have the entire season worth of people buying Rangers outdoor jerseys than like maybe a couple months before the game, if that.
One would think that. However, have you considered the NHL's bang up marketing?
Yeah, they're doing a really good job. Really, really good job.
They never miss. I think I've said my piece. I don't know how you're feeling, but I think we've...
Yeah, there's really not a whole lot to talk about on this one. I guess it's kind of tough when you have that big of a game coming up against the Devils and you're kind of just looking forward to it. Obviously, just to recap, like, the injuries suck, but they definitely can get through it. It's good that it's at least happening early in the year, and they are just continuing to, rack up points in the standings. And the other thing I will say real quick is, currently they're first in the Metro. I think, I don't remember if it was last episode or the one before, like I was talking about, obviously the Canes and the Devils had quite a big gap on us last year in terms of points in the standings, and that's all because in the month of December last year, the Rangers were god-awful. So if you could just avoid having like a 2-3 win month, they probably should win this division, or at least be second or something like that, because they weren't very far off from winning it last year, and it's all because they literally could not play hockey for a month straight. So just avoid that, and they should be fine. But other than that, I mean, obviously mainly positives, but we kind of got the negatives out of the way, and we just have to see how things shake out. So
yeah. So we'll probably be back around next Wednesday. You'll have the 2 games to talk about for brain isn't working. Minnesota and the Columbus game.
And
we have that
Columbus, yeah.
Then we have that awesome week off. But we'll probably
just for no reason.
That's the majority of that is going to be just previewing that, because we'll have a better idea of who the Rangers will have and who the Devils will have, especially in goaltending. But I think for right now, that's all I have. I thank you also very much for watching another week of the Rangers Gameplan Podcast. Until next week, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. And as always, go Rangers.
Yep, go Rangers.